G'day guys, Luke here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, guys, we're looking at keeping reptiles outside, some of the rules and regulations we might have to think of, a few tips and tricks on how to create a reptile enclosure outdoors, no matter if it's a lizard pit or a enclosed area. So let's have a deep dive and have a look at keeping reptiles outside. Before putting any reptile outside, I need to check the climate that I'm currently living in case to see if the reptiles that I do have in my family can be put outside. So here in Sydney, I can put just about almost anything from along the east coast of Australia outside. For example, eastern blue-tongued skinks, blotched blue-tongued skinks, land mullets, Jackie dragons, eastern bearded dragons, eastern water dragons, Gibson water dragons, a few freshwater turtle species, lace monitors, Rosenberg monitors. The list just goes on. However, if I'm living in a different climate, such as Florida, I need to make sure that the animals I do own from a different area can live outside. If not, what some of the things you might need to consider to put them outside so they can live quite happily. For example, here in Sydney, if I want to have a parenti or sand monitor or an arid species of reptile that grows too big to house indoors, what other changes I need to make the enclosure suitable. In the design phase, before I kind of start buying materials and planning out what enclosure I want to make, I want to look at the area I want to put it in. Now, just check your regulations with structures or council regulations, anything with permanent or non-permanent structures, just to make sure you're following, housing regulations, so not breaking any regulations or laws, whatever the case may be. So, for example, in New South Wales, I do believe any permanent structure has to be within away from the fence line by about 1 metre. Anything temporary, it's not too much of a hassle. It's just to make sure when you do move, you pull it apart safely and it doesn't damage the perimeter fence. Once you have chosen your location to start building your enclosure, just make sure it's going to be your sunniest winter spot. What I mean by that is during the winter time, you want to maximize the amount of sun you're getting for your reptiles to keep them warm, happy and healthy. But during the summertime, it's not getting as much exposure. That way, not overheating your reptiles, causing them unnecessary stress and dying out that way. There's an old saying, the heat kills anything quicker than the cold will. So at least with a cold reptile, if you get to them in time, they can be saved. But anything that overheats, it's a very quick time frame from they can be fine 1 minute and be dead the next minute. So me personally, I'd rather have our animals cold than overheating. Regarding to the enclosure that you're building depends on the materials you may need and also what species you are owning. If you're owning, let's say, small species like freshwater turtles, dragons, skinks, stuff that's not going to dig very big holes or not very deep holes, there is a few things you can do. So with this little bit here that you're looking at, from my understanding of the design phase and building phase of this enclosure, of course the owner, Andrew, has used stainless steel metal by the looks of it. He's also used the fencing at the time because those are regulations at the time when he built this, I believe. Of course, time changes. He's gone probably about 2 or 3 feet into the earth with the fencing to make sure the lizards can't dig out. As well, he's probably used some very big rocks and slates underneath the soft soil. So once they dig past a certain point, they can't go any further because the rocks are a rock. They are not exactly got to go through that. Some people also use either concrete slabs to make sure the lizards don't dig out, or very thick wire mesh that doesn't rust, so they don't dig out that way. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. For your bigger stuff like goannas and your tortoises that overseas, I know some keepers use stainless steel mesh that the tortoise can't get through. If you're building an enclosed enclosure, you want to make sure you're using very treated timbers, that way it doesn't rot over time. You might use some non-toxic oils to prevent that rotting phase. So very sturdy screws, some very sturdy wire mesh, so these larger species can't get out and everyone stays safe and secure. Here in Sydney, since it gets so cold during our winter time sometimes, we need to provide a hot box for our more arid species or our larger species of reptile that can't really handle the cold, as well as our coastal species can. So our parentis here, we've got a hot box here, so we're looking at the big boy Henry and his girlfriend Katie. So during the summertime, we don't really worry about the hot box too much because being summertime, they're fine. During the winter time, we turn on the heat elements inside this box here to keep them warm. So basically what a hot box is just a wooden box with maybe a bit of insulation in there to trap the heat in better, with an entry and exit hole for the animals to get in and out of the box. And of course having heat elements inside of it to keep them warm. Unfortunately, I don't know the Fahrenheit conversion, but let's go off by Celsius. Anything below 20 degrees Celsius for long periods of time is actually quite harmful for reptiles. Ideally, like to keep it over the low 20s to the very early 30s, so no more than 33 degrees Celsius. I think that's about 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the idea is with our larger species of reptile to keep them warm during the winter time, we have a hot box to keep them warm. Anything that's from, Sydney, Australia, they can handle the cold, so they'll find their own little burrow or hiding place to retreat from, and they'll just slip through the winter. I'll just jump back on escape proofing because it also includes kid proofing these enclosures. Like I mentioned with the lizard pit or snake pit, if you want to do your own snake pit, as long as those snakes cannot climb out. We use either stainless steel wire mesh down the bottom, some very big rocks or slates to prevent the lizards digging out, as well as concrete for the bigger stuff. When it comes to enclosed space like this, of course, you don't want the animal getting out, but you don't want young kids getting in. So with the fencing with the lizard pit, we make it high enough where young kids cannot jump over, but of course tall enough where I can get in and out quite easily. With this enclosure we're looking at here, which by the way, this is Blade, he's another cheeky little parenti. We have latches and locks on these doors to prevent the lizard opening them, but as well for young kids not to open them, trying to pat this lizard and pretty much losing a finger. So always kid-proof and escape-proof your enclosures to have a happy, safe family and a happy and safe pet. Just adding on to escape-proofing, kid-proofing, also making sure no pest or unwanted feral animals getting into your enclosure to do any damage to your beautiful animals. So along the fence line, we've got these spikes to prevent cats walking along the fence line, jumping in and eating our lizards for dinner. We've also got these sheeted perspex to prevent any animals jumping out. Any rocks or anything that the lizards can use to jump out of, these branches are also trimmed back regularly. About a metre, I want to make sure things are clear from the fence, because anything that can be used to be a ramp, the animals will use. So the idea is to keep stuff from getting out, but we also don't want things getting in and causing problems. Big one here are rats and mice, so we're making sure they can't get in. Once you've decided which direction you want to go with your enclosure, where you've got your layout, you've got all your fencing and materials in place, now it's pretty much time to decorate your enclosure to make sure you've got a nice environment for your animals to live in. So anything that's more of a wetland or tropical animal, you want to make sure there's plenty of water to go around for all the animals to house in the enclosure. So here we've got a very big pond that everyone can swim around and share. It's not small enough where one individual will dominate and make everyone run away and everyone will die from thirst. It's big enough for everyone to share and cause no drama. Tons of hiding places in here, so these plants, all these rocky outcrop areas, even the trees will provide coverage and a shelter for these animals. So obviously the rocks are in the sun, so throughout the day they warm up. During the night time it kind of keeps the animals insulated and keep warm. The plants there are just there to provide extra shelter for anything small or slow that can't get into the rock crevice quick enough. The only downside of having an open enclosure like this pit is birds of prey can sometimes come in the area, at least when there's hundreds of hiding places nearby for these lizards and turtles and whatnot. They can at least get deep enough in the water or deep enough in the rock work to get out of the way of potential predators. Or if they see an unwanted human, they can go, nah, see you later, I'm going to hide, you're not going to get me. So these hides go very deep into the earth, so there's no chance of them overheating, and it keeps a nice consistent temperature throughout the year. So they can either keep cool in the earth or come out, get some more sun, or to go back in where they keep cooler and don't overheat. With any climbing structures, of course, like I mentioned, we keep it away from the fence for about a metre to make sure no one gets out. So these animals, especially these dragons, can view their territory from a higher standpoint, and if see any potential danger, they dart for cover. Regarding to the larger species of reptiles such as goannas, tortoises, stuff like that that require a bigger house or quite large hides, make sure you give them enough hiding places also, as well make sure they're big enough for them to get into and get out of. And as well make sure the environment is suitable for their needs. So if they're more of an arid species, don't make it too humid or too wet, keep it on the drier side. That way your lizards or tortoises, whatever you're owning, is happy and they don't get sick from an environment that they're not used to. Since there's so many little critters in this enclosure here, I'll usually put out about 3 or 4 food bowls in this enclosure to make sure everybody's getting their fair share of food. So all the guys that kind of like to climb up, I'll put it a bit higher. All the ones that kind of stick to the ground, I'll put it right down the bottom where they can get to the food. and a couple other areas just to mix it up. Because of course, when you have so many animals, there's got to be a hierarchy and dominance. The last thing you want is someone to miss out, because a big dominant animal has bullied a smaller, more timid individual. So everyone gets their fair share, they get the feel, and they can be happy. Any of the bigger guys, such as the parentes that are here, they are separated when they're feeding, so we don't have any fights and problems when they are being fed. The last thing I want is to have World War III in the Lizard Kingdom, for example. So when everyone gets food, we'll make sure that everyone's getting their fair share. Any fights that break out, we'll separate. And anything that's got potential danger, we'll at least isolate, so there's not going to be any surprise attacks when we feed multiple animals. Last thing we'll go through this video is live plants. Of course, when you're keeping animals outside in a naturalistic environment, of course you've got plants in it. Now, I do recommend with plants, make sure they're non-toxic, so your reptile does not eat them. When they start to get overgrown, trim them back for safety reasons, as well as viewing reasons, so you can at least still see your animals and make sure they're doing fine. If there's something that doesn't seem right, at least you can jump in and get the animal safely. With non-toxic plants, that way if lizards have decided to eat the plants, nothing's going to happen to them. Now, I do recommend trying to get plants that are found in the same area as your reptiles are. That way, it's a bit more of an ecosystem in your backyard. You've got a piece of the wild in your house or in your backyard to look at every time you go out there. Otherwise, I think that's about it for today's video. If you guys got any questions or there's something I have left out, feel free to ask down below and I can answer that the best that I can. Hopefully this video has helped those who are looking at doing enclosure outdoors. I'm looking at doing 1 or 2 at the moment. Got one somewhat started, just figuring out getting bits and pieces as I'm going. It's a lot of fun. Yes, it can be a bit damaging on the wallet, but it's for the animal's well-being and benefit, so it's worth it at the end of the day. So thank you guys all for watching today's video. Hoping you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.